Are you an aspiring podcaster who struggle to make impact, who struggle to make a difference, who struggle to put yourself out there consistently? If you answer the question yes, all those questions yes, this video we're going to talk about how to count your podcast impact so that way you can understand that you're on the right path. In addition to that, the path that you are on might seem confusing, might seem like you're losing. In addition to that, it just takes time for you to discover the impact that you are making. That was pretty good. What's going on, everybody? My name is Terryl Humphrey. Welcome to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. Over the last half a decade, we produced over 893 podcast episodes while helping 30 entrepreneurs launch their podcast in less than 90 minutes. So this topic, the reason why this topic came about today is because there's been so much momentum building, and I want to really focus on the impact. The impact is what creates results. Results is what creates outcomes. So let's go ahead and get into it. So point number one. Point number one, have smart goals. Have smart goals for your podcast. Okay. And SMART it's the acronym for SMART. So it's specific. If memory serves me correctly, measurable, attainable, what is called the R is I know the T is timely, the R is relevant, RELEVANT. The R is relevant. So SMART. You have to have SMART goals with your podcast. When I launched my podcast a half a decade ago, I launched my podcast not even having no type of goals, no type of desire to really count the amount of people that I want to help. I just knew I want to help others, and I didn't recognize that I needed to put numbers, dollars behind it, whatever the case is. Over time, as I start learning more about business, start learning more about the language of it, start learning more about podcasting, I'm like, wait, hold on. There's something that's here. There's something that's here. It's the impact. I might not see it today, but I can see it in the future. I might not see it and understand where it's coming from, but I can recognize that it's coming from somewhere. You see, the impact is measurable. In other words, that impact can be counted. Let's just say this past weekend, we're about to get live. Hold on, dang. I just thought about this. We had a busy weekend. Hold on. So Wednesday, I did a morning presentation, then a workshop. Then I went to an event. And then when I did that, it was like, oh, okay, there's something here. The impact was being generated because people were actually listening, that was watching, and they had further questions around podcasting. So the specific goal is to help entrepreneurs launch their podcast in less than 90 minutes. Podcast is goal number one. It's specific. Measurable is in a timely thing. It's like, okay, there was 42 people at the morning presentation I did. Shout out to 1 Million Cups. And there was 42 people. So 42 people indicates that it's measurable. There were 42 people listening to my presentation, asking questions. Well, not all 42, but it was some people asking questions, but everybody was engaged with the conversation. Or engaged with the presentation. And so what this taught me is this. I was like, oh, hold on. I'm creating impact. I'm creating and making a difference. You see, that alone taught me that I'm doing the right thing, but it just takes time. As I start to measure the results, as I start to measure the outcome, I'm like, ooh, I'm making a difference. I'm thinking just because I'm in business, I got to only count the revenue. But thus far, we only made, last weekend on Juneteenth, we made $386.40. $386.40 while helping 5 entrepreneurs launch their podcast in less than 5 minutes. Launch their podcast in less than 5 minutes. You see, what that taught me is that impact, or the 5 entrepreneurs who sat down, shared their story, and was hesitant to launch their podcast because, yes, you might not have the equipment, but that's absolutely okay. You see that the revenue is not just the impact. The entrepreneurs that I was working with are the impact. Every last one of them sat down, and before they sat down, they was hesitant. As I communicated with them, as I guided them, as I talked with them, you saw a complete shift. You saw them not talk about their stories, to talk about their stories confidently. You see, impact can be felt. Impact can be seen. Impact can be demonstrated. Impact can be talked about. Impact is emotional. Impact is psychological. Impact can be numbered. You see, impact can be measured. Why? Because you got to measure the impact more than the revenue, because the revenue matches the impact. The impact is what matters. The impact is the focus. Yes, we're all in business, and counting numbers, counting revenue is important, but it's not as important as documenting the impact. The impact is what make a difference. You see, as I started to recognize that, I'm like, ooh, hold on. I'm like, ooh, okay. Impact is actually saying people are actually listening. Impact equals structure. You see, the impact, equal structure. You see, when your podcast is creating impact, people are coming to you saying that you have helped me with X, Y, and Z. You've helped me. You encouraged me. You inspired me. You see, impact is people coming up to you saying, you helped me overcome the failure. You helped me overcome the hesitation. You've helped me launch my podcast in a timely manner. You see, that's measurable, because now, as it's measurable, it's documented. X amount of people came to me and said that we helped them launch their podcast in a certain amount of time, and now they're able to see the results. They have the confidence to go continue their podcast, because what happens is that you just need, sometimes we as people just need a boost of encouragement, a boost of encouragement, of commitment. You see, just because we have an idea doesn't mean that idea is going to come to life. Just because we have an idea doesn't mean that the idea is wasted. What it means is that your impact has to be documented. The impact has to be grown. The impact has to be the focus. If the revenue is only the focus, where's the impact? You see, impact creates testimonials. It creates people who are sharing their experience. They're not telling no lie. They're telling their experience. When you ask people their biggest takeaway, you're hearing from their words, from their perspective, from their thought process. It's not the fact that the impact is not seen. Moreover, it's that the impact is not documented. The impact is not measured. The impact is not the focus. You see, as I got more clear around the business I was doing, I was like, now that I understand the business, it's like, okay, how can I generate more impact? How can I create more impact? How can I help others not only be more confident, but really help them be more organized to market themselves effectively? You see, podcasting is a way for you to connect with others. It's a way for others to learn more about your business. It's a way for others to learn more about how you can help them. If you're not helping others, you're not creating impact. You see, this morning I was talking to ChatGPT, and as I was talking, I'm gonna put ChatGPT. And as I was talking to it, right, I'm talking, and it's giving me ideas, give me concepts. But here's the reality of it: it's giving me information based off the knowledge I just shared with it, based off the story the question I just asked, based off the context I just gave it. You see, impact comes from context. When you have context, you understand the problem that you're solving. You see, your podcast has to solve a problem for you to create impact. Your podcast has to solve a problem so your impact can be measurable, so your impact can be specific. So hold on. So your impact can be specific, so your impact can be measurable, so your impact can be attainable, so your impact can be relevant, so your impact can be timely. It's not the fact that your impact is not happening today. You just haven't given yourself time, and you haven't given yourself enough time for it to show. Like for when people start to come to me and say, I've seen you from somewhere. In my mind, I'm like, from where? Because I'm trying to figure out where you know me from. You see, it's not the fact that people know me. It's the fact that I continue to show up. I continue to show up, and what happens is that impact, impact gets remembered. It gets remembered. What does that mean? It's remembered. It's feeling. It's like an emotional attachment. People are attached to the impact because the impact changes lives. You see, my podcast, Failures Knowledge Podcast, is not just about communicating, talking, and creating content. No, it's about creating impact to help others turn setbacks into success. You see, we've all got many failures, and the failures that we have doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It means that we have to apply the knowledge to turn that failure into knowledge. You see, when I start turning my failures into knowledge, I start to understand that I was generating impact. I was creating impact. I was creating an outcome. Hold on. You see, that outcome only comes from impact. But I tell you this, when you recognize that you're creating impact, I don't know if this is the right word, but you gotta quadruple down on it. You gotta multiply. You gotta multiply your impact. Why? Because when you quadruple down on it, you're able to help more people. So my goal is to really help entrepreneurs launch their podcast in a timely manner. Why? Because if you can launch your podcast effectively, you can continue the conversation. When you go to networking events and introduce yourself, yes, everybody's selling themselves, but everybody is not standing out because everyone sounds the same. Impact makes you sound different. Impact makes you sound important. Impact makes you sound like the authority in your space. It's not the fact that the impact is not existing. It's the fact that the impact is not measured. The impact has to be measured in order for you to understand how your podcast, how your business, how you are making a difference. You see, when I start measuring the impact, when I start tracking the impact, shout out to the Smart Incubator program. They recommended this book. It was called CRM or Die. CRM or Die. Essentially, document the people that you speak with, like track, communicate, and follow up with people that you're communicating with. Why? Because it helps you stay consistent. It helps you stay organized. I'm getting to a point now where if I'm communicating with you for one day, I'm just going to reach out to you on a random basis. And in fact, I did that yesterday. I did that yesterday. Shout out to my buddy, Nate. I was driving. Hold on, that's a phone. Put phone. That don't even look like a phone. This right here is called phone. And when I was driving, I was like, man, he just popped into my mind. I got my phone, called him, and I was driving on my way to help my wife. When I picked up the phone and I called him, he was like, man. He looked at it. He was like, man, I got to answer the phone. You see, it's not the fact that I wanted anything, because I really was just calling just to check on him, because it popped up in my mind. When it popped up in my mind, I just called. What is that doing? That's creating impact. That's showing that I care about other people's journey. That's showing that I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about your impact, your journey, and how everything is going for you. You see, I don't want anything in return. It's not the fact that I'm documenting just to keep score. No, I'm documenting so that way, when I come encounter with new people, with new entrepreneurs, I can literally say we've helped 30 entrepreneurs launch their podcast in less than 90 minutes, and this is how we did that. In fact, here's how we helped them, because they have testimonials. We have testimonials. You see, it's the impact that makes a difference. Yeah, Ernce. The impact is what people remember. The impact is what people feel. The impact is what stays top of mind. You might not be in business if you don't understand the impact. In fact, I was focused on the impact more than just making revenue. And then over time, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm focused on too much on the impact. But I tell you this, there's not a such thing as focusing on too much of the impact, but you have to learn how to combine the business with the impact, because the impact only comes from structure. The impact only comes from consistency. The impact only comes from you showing up with your podcast. Okay. So point number one, hold on. Point number one that we just talked about was this, is that you have to have SMART goals for your podcast. So SMART goals, the acronym is an acronym, and it's called, the S is for specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is relevant, T is timely, if I remember correctly. So when you have SMART goals for your podcast, now here comes the hard part. This is the most challenging part there is. Tie your business. Hold on. I'm gonna say that differently. Structure your impact. Structure your impact. What does that mean? Terrell? That means this. When you are going out to make an impact, I'll give you a prime example. My wife and I, we did a vendor event. Hold on. Let me. I gotta make this bigger. Hold on. I gotta make this bigger. All right. So my wife and I, we did a vendor event. Let's say this is FIK. You know what I mean? Let's say this is failure. E is knowledge. All right. So we did the tent. We had a vendor marketplace, and we were here. Table, boom, 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 boom. Lights. There we go. So me, customer, lights. Okay, we did this event. And as we're doing the podcast live, like we're recording, like it was actually a great setup. It was a phenomenal setup. It was an amazing setup. So as we're there recording, we're just recording, talking to customers, talking to people, and we're helping people launch their podcast in a timely manner. So with that being said, as people are walking by, people are able to see an interview going on. People are able to see a conversation going on. People are able to see, like, wait, hold on. There's something here. What's here? Impact being documented. Impact has to be documented. Why? Because the more people you work with, the more people you communicate with. What I started to recognize was this. When I start to understand business, I start asking a lot of questions. Some things did not make sense. I'm like, how are all these businesses doing so many different things? Shout out to the book, Built to Sell. They talk about how this company was an advertising company. No, there was a marketing company. And underneath this company, they was doing websites. Hold on. I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna write this down. They was doing websites. They was doing advertisements. They were doing social media marketing. They were doing logos. And they was doing marketing. Don't get me wrong, they were doing marketing. But they was just marketing too many different things. And so in the book, it explains that the owner was trying to sell his company. And so he went to someone else who already sold 3 companies. And he said, man, I'm trying to sell my company because I'm trying to go spend time with my family, travel, and just enjoy life. And so when he went to him, he had so many different things that he was selling. He had a website. He had advertisers or billboards. He had social media marketing. He had logos. He had so many ways to help a customer market their business. He wasn't effectively helping customers market their business. Why? Because he was all over the place. And so this terminology is called generalizing. E-R-A-L-I-Z-I-N-G. It's called generalizing. What is generalizing? Generalizing is being everything to everyone and not having something to stand out. Generalizing is not specific. Generalizing is saying, I do 5 things. What do you need help with? And I'm like, how can I start implementing that? How can I start doing that? You see, impact is understanding that you can't generalize. You got to specialize. I went to let's say a dentist. I did go to a dentist, and I went to go get a checkup. They did the x-ray and was like, you got 3 cavities. And they sent me to another location because the location I was currently at did not specialize in that. And so when I went to the other location, I got the cavities filled, and this organization sent me to another dentist because they didn't specialize in the other treatment that I needed to get. You see, specialization makes you different. Specialization makes your impact grow. When you have structure over your impact, you can be more consistent. When you have structure over your impact, the way you specialize is the way you focus. Specializing equals focus. Now, when I started really getting into business, I was in advertising, I was in social media marketing, I was in videography, I was in photography. I was doing so many different things. I'm like, how do I stand out? How will I be able to stand out? And over time, I was like, man, I'm still trying to do so many different things. And then recently, I got more clear around podcasting. I'm like, okay, well, I can focus on podcasts because I've actually produced over 893 podcast episodes. And I'm like, oh, I know how to help entrepreneurs launch their podcast. So I'm like, why not help others launch their podcast? And so then I start doing research. I'm like, is this a demand? Are people interested in launching their podcast? Majority say yes. Majority say no, but the majority, what the data says, what the research says, that there are people already searching about the industry that I'm in. And I'm like, oh, I think I found it. You see, specializing is listening to what your customers are saying, then going online to figure out information. There's this book called The Zen of Marketing. Shout out to that book. Again, it's a great concept. Shout out to my brother Ray. He actually the one that told me about it. Nonetheless, you can go on what's called Google Library or something like that. Google Library. I'm not for sure about that one, but it's where you go and search your keyword. So I'm in podcasting, and when I go search for podcasting, they have like a chart, ... and then they got podcasts, and then like extra stuff, whatever the case is. So my keyword is podcast, but podcast is being searched on a daily basis. In fact, all these companies, Buzzsprout, what's called, Podbean or something like that. They got Podmatch, they got podcasts, they got podcast conferences, they got podcast events, they got all these different things. And I'm like, oh, there's demand here. Impact comes from demand. There's demand here. What does that even mean? There's demand here. There's people interested in launching their podcast. There's opportunity here. So a lot of people want to launch their podcast. In fact, the previous entrepreneurs that I start working with, they already have the equipment. They got the cameras, they got the light, they got the microphones, they got the studio. But guess what? They're not using their studio effectively because they don't know how to podcast. It's not just about person recording walking and talking. It's literally about providing value to create impact. Your impact is not being created because you don't have a structure. You don't have a system. You don't have a blueprint. On the contrary, when you focus on creating a system, a structure, a blueprint, you can be more consistent. You see, when I start helping entrepreneurs become more consistent, first, let's get you structure. First, let's get you organized. First, let's understand your mission and the impact that you want to focus on. A lot of aspiring podcasters who have the idea of launching their podcast, and I often ask them, why do you want to launch your podcast? And they say this. Guess what? Guess what they say? They say, I want to make some form of impact. They never go to, I want to make X amount of money in X amount of time and da. They say, I want to make this impact because I want to go back to my community and teach them about financial literacy. I want to make this impact because I want to go back to my community and teach them about entrepreneurship. I want to make this impact and go back to my community and teach them how to pursue their dreams. It's never about the money. It's always about the impact. See, when you are structured, you can help your customers more consistently. As I get more structured, as I get more organized, as I get more focused, it's like I know how to help entrepreneurs launch their podcast in a timely manner. Why? Because it's not just about 90 minutes. It's not just about 5 minutes. It's not just about 10 minutes. It's about following a system that will help you generate impact faster. You generate impact faster when you understand you're working towards a goal. When I talked about earlier about having a specific, a smart goal, it has to be specific. It has to be measurable, has to be attainable, has to be relevant, has to be timely. Podcasting is specific. Podcasting is measurable. Podcasting is attainable. Podcasting is relevant. Podcasting is timely. Because if you go online, everybody and their mama want to launch a podcast. In fact, everybody, I ain't gonna say everybody, majority of people and their mamas has launched a podcast. It's not just about putting yourself out there. It's about providing value that creates impact. Hold on. Impact is the focus. Last point I want to hit on is this. That last one to hit on is that you have to, this is a big one. Give yourself grace. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what your podcast is about. It doesn't matter the customers that you're serving. What matters is that you give yourself grace. You have to give yourself grace to understand what you're doing. You have to give yourself grace to understand the time that it takes to develop it. You have to give yourself grace to recognize that just because I want to launch my podcast doesn't mean that I can launch my podcast. I just have to follow a structure. I remember speaking to one of my friends, and she was like that she'd been wanting to launch her podcast for the last 3 years. I'm like, 3 years? I'm like, there's no way. 3 years? What the mess? But I'll tell you this. 3 years is a form of hesitation. Is a form of hesitation. Why? Because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm speaking about. Why? Because I don't want to be embarrassed. Why? Because I want to come off as professional. You see, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's everything wrong with the 3 years. The 3 years that it takes to launch your podcast, we can literally help you launch your podcast in less than 90 minutes, in less than 5 minutes. It's not the fact that your podcast is not impactful. It's more so that your podcast hasn't been structured. You see, when you give yourself grace, you just got to give yourself permission to go along the journey. Like, give yourself permission to start. Give yourself permission to learn. Give yourself permission to understand. Impact is not created overnight. Impact is created overnight, over time. Because when you start to recognize that you're making impact, you see, it took me a long time that I was making the impact because nobody was actually coming to me and saying that you helped me do X, Y, and Z. In fact, I'm just thinking like, man, I hope I'm making a difference. I hope I'm making an impact. I hope I'm helping others. But then when people start telling me I'm helping them, I'm like, ooh, That's what I was missing. I was missing the proof of concept. I was going to say validation, but no, it's proof of concept. Does this actually work? Are people actually searching it? Does people actually need it? Then we start to learn more about the business and you start doing your research. You start to like really dive in. But grace has to be the focus. Grace has to be the study. Grace has to be what everybody pay attention to. Because now, when you focus on impact, you're giving yourself grace because it takes a lot of time. I ain't gonna even lie. Like whenever you start your business, when my podcast is taking a half a decade, 893 podcast episodes later, while helping 30 entrepreneurs launch their podcast, it just takes time. If I had a goal that I was gonna be a millionaire in 1 month. I had a goal. I was going to be a millionaire. I started my journey back in August of 2021. I thought I was going to be a millionaire in September of 2021. It's taken a half. I'm not a millionaire now. I'm not a millionaire now. No. Half a decade to even understand what I'm doing. It's taken a half a decade to even understand what I'm doing. And I tell you, the impact, the clarity, the structure, the organization, the business foundation of it, it needed that time to be taken. Because now, as I'm hitting the ground running, I'm hitting it running with a system, with the process, with proof of concept. We're like, oh, this is work. This is why I work. What if I help more people? What if I could generate helping more people create an impact? What if I just help others launch their podcast in less than 90 minutes, less than 5 minutes? What if I just focus on that? As I start to focus on that, I start to see a shift. Impact comes from time, but you have to give yourself time to develop so you can start generating impact. Yes, we're in business. Everybody's in business. And the numbers has to be documented. It has to be tracked. But it's not just with revenue that the numbers has to be tracked. It's not just the profit. It's the amount of people who are coming into your world, who's learning your skill, who's gaining the confidence, who's gaining the ability to go apply the information to themselves. It takes time. Yet the time that it takes is the time that it needed for you to develop grace within you for yourself. So just to recap everything that we talked about today, point number 1, you have to have SMART goals. For your podcast, you have to have SMART goals. You have to have goals that you're working towards every single day. Point number 2 is that you have to structure your impact. Your impact should be consistent. Your impact should not be random. It should not be generalized. It should be specific and specialized. Last point that we talked about, that you have to give yourself grace. You're not going to know everything as soon as you launch your podcast. However, you can learn everything as you continue along your journey. And then the more you give yourself time and grace, the more outcomes you will see. So if you are an established business owner and or a multifamily investor who struggle with launching your podcast or marketing yourself effectively, shoot us an email at Terrell@failureIsKnowledge, and we look forward to helping you soon. Not only just with launching your podcast, but how to network more effectively to continue the conversation. Because when I go to networking events, everybody's pitching to everybody, but what makes you different? When you have a podcast that people can listen and don't watch, they literally are following you because now you're not selling to them, you're educating them. That's good. That's good. Lastly, don't be afraid to fail because failure is knowledge. Hit that follow and subscribe. See y'all next time.